Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Lunch and Learn. My name's Sally, and I am the Policy Manager here at Disability Employment Australia. It's lovely to have you all here with us today. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which each of us are joining from today. For me, that's the Dark and Chung people. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and those of the future. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. These sessions are a partnership between Disability Employment Australia and the Centre for Inclusive Employment. And they exist to provide practical tools, resources, information, and advice to people, all of us involved in the delivery of employment services, with the aim of providing the highest possible quality employment services that we can. DEA is a national peak body for employment service providers, and the Centre for Inclusive Employment is a nationwide consortium that is led by the Centre for Social Impact at Swinburne University. And the consortium consists of, as well as DEA, Inclusion Australia, National Disability Services, Family Advocacy, and the University of Melbourne. Today, Expressions will be providing captioning, and Liv is about to pop some instructions into the chat on how you can access that captioning. The session is going to be recorded and it will be made available to you in the coming days if you do want to rewatch it or share it with anyone else in your team. Today, I am joined by representatives from Inclusion Australia, the national representative organisation for people with an intellectual disability. And they will be providing practical and lived experience tips and advice. And those tips will be provided by their policy officers, Luke Nelson and Brooke Canham. Both Luke and Brooke are policy officers at Inclusion Australia, and together they have worked across a number of different projects and come with over 2 decades of experience between them. So, during the session, if you have any questions, please pop them in the question and answer the Q&A box or into the chat. We'll be monitoring those, and we will attempt to get to as many as we can. However, if any that we can't get to today, we will endeavour to follow up with you after the session. So I will now hand over to Luke and Brooke to present the session. Thank you.
Today we will be talking about why inclusive practice is important when you are supporting or working with someone who has an intellectual disability.
I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land that I'm speaking from. We acknowledge the traditional custodians on the lands where each of you are living and working. We pay our respects to any First Nations people joining us today.
We recognise self-advocates who have worked very hard over the years for equal and human rights for all.
Luke and I are policy officers at Inclusion Australia. Inclusion Australia is the national disability representative organisation for people with an intellectual disability and their families. We bring people together through our members to support and advocate for people with an intellectual disability.
Today, we are going to talk about what intellectual disability is, why having a job is important, what inclusive practice, what is inclusive practice? Why is inclusive practice important? What we hope you will do when you are supporting someone who has an intellectual disability.
We think it is important to start today's session by explaining what intellectual disability is. Intellectual disability is a lifelong condition that affects a person's intellectual skills and their behaviour in different situations. Some of the most common causes for intellectual disability include Down syndrome, Fragile X syndrome, premature at birth, and childhood brain injury.
Every person with an intellectual disability is different. All people with intellectual disabilities can learn and develop new skills, but they need the right support. People with intellectual disabilities have the same feelings, rights, hopes as everyone else.
Many people with an intellectual disability do not work. Some people think if you have an intellectual disability, it means you cannot work. And this is not true. People with an intellectual disability can work if they have the right support.
Why is having a job important? Having a job helps someone learn new skills, meet new people, have financial independence. The pathway to work looks very different for people with an intellectual disability. It is not easy. There are lots of barriers. This is why inclusive practice is important.
So this is a diagram that shows how hard it can be for people with an intellectual disability to gain open employment. We call this the polished pathway. There are different pathways you can take from school to employment, but most of them have barriers in the way. The barriers are shown by traffic cones. Some examples of barriers are no opportunities for meaningful work experience, no accessible information, no good information to understand how the DSP works. The DSP reporting system being inaccessible. In fact, most people have to get a lot of support to report every fortnight. Some of the barriers have changed since we first made this diagram, but there are still more changes needed.
Inclusive practice is a way of working so that everyone is valued, respected, and able to contribute equally. It means identifying and removing barriers. It is not a checklist. It is a mindset built into everyday way of working. It is a long-term commitment that takes ongoing learning, action, and reflection.
Inclusion Australia did a project about inclusive practice. We called it Towards Inclusive Practice. We made advice for government and large organisations about how to include people with an intellectual disability. We made lots of resources such as guides, fact sheets, tip sheets, and videos.
You can visit our website to find out more, the resources, and learn more. Today, we want to talk to you about two big topics that project
The
Practice
first topic is accessible information. We all have the right to information that we can understand. This can be easy read, plain English. You should ask the person you are supporting how they would like to receive information. Check if they need the information in easy read. It is important that you are sending them information in a way that is accessible for them.
It is important that you are aware of the power you have. Think about how you would feel if the roles were switched. Okay. Okay. Before we finish today, before, sorry, before we finish today, we want to share some things like that we would like employment consultants to do if they were supporting us. I want you to know that no one with an intellectual disability is the same. This means work plans should be different. Everyone should be given a chance to learn and grow. People should be able to try new things and experiences.
I would want you to work with me, not against me. I'm an adult, so I want to be treated like one. Give me a fair chance and don't judge me or make assumptions.
Hey Brooke, it's Kirsten here from Inclusion Australia. I just thought we might go back a little bit to a section that we were touching on before we kind of wrap up a little bit, which is the slide before here. We heard Luke say a little bit about the importance of this power and trust. And he said it's important that people are aware of the power that they have and think about how they would feel if the roles were swapped. Is there anything else you wanted to say on that section, or did you want me to help out there?
Yeah, help out.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were saying that it's important that to think about what might make you seem powerful to other people. So some of these dot points on here, we kind of went through the first two ones here. So be aware of the power you have. Think about how you would feel if the roles were swapped. And then here, so think about what might make you seem powerful to others. And make changes if you need to. So do you want to carry on these three dot points here on the screen?
Yeah. For example, the clothes you wear, lanyards or job titles. Think about the way you speak. Are you using everyday words? Make sure there is extra time and breaks when needed.
Perfect, thank you. So I might move forward to the slide we just spoke about. So Luke gave his kind of tips or the important things that people should know about when they're working with people with intellectual disability from his perspective. And Brooke, you gave your kind of top tips or most important things to you. So the next slide here, which is around useful resources, I might pass back to you, Brooke, if you're wanting to share about that.
We also wanted to share that along with Towards Inclusive Practice website, Inclusion Australia and some of our members also have other useful resources which are displayed on the screen now.
Thank you, Brooke. We're running nice and ahead of schedule. So I just thought we might mention what some of these are. So we've got three or two. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brooke.
So CID is Council for Intellectual Disability. Valid is the Victorian organisation and Inclusion Australia.
Wonderful. And we'll share these slides as well. So they've got some links there that if people are wanting to find out more, they can click on those links to find out some more there. Now, I'm just giving people a chance to maybe pop their questions into the chat if they do have some, because it's been kind to us, technology today so far, so we're running ahead of schedule. However, Luke, I'll pass over to you because I know you are just going to ask if there is any questions.
Yep. So thank you very much. Thank you for attending the session today. Does anyone have any questions?
We've been asked if we can get a copy of the slides.
I would imagine so.
Yes, absolutely. We will send out a copy of the recording and the slides, and they'll also be available on the APO, the Australian Policy Observatory website, which is where the Centre for Inclusive Employment is hosting all of their resources, and on the Centre's own website as well after today. So everyone will get a copy of the slides and the recording as well.
Wonderful. Luke and Brooke, while we're waiting for people to maybe pop in some questions,
Here's another one here.
They've already got one.
What is the biggest barrier you think of people with intellectual disability to open employment, and how can employment support services help overcome that barrier?
Good question.
I feel like people get overlooked sometimes for a barrier, and not in a nice way. And for someone to overcome that barrier, I feel like a support person might come to the workplace just to kind of observe on what's happening, um, so people can understand why people are getting overlooked, and then they can have the insight and explain, just don't be that way kind of thing.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're going to do with open employment is I think the organisation has to set up, if they're going to employ people with disabilities, that's fantastic. But I think what we also need to look at is putting things in place before we go down that path so that,
Doesn't escalate.
yeah, so that it doesn't get to a point where the person wants to leave because the organisation doesn't have things in place for that. So I think I'm all for open employment because that's where I come from. But I think the organisation needs to be set up. But we also need to include people with disabilities in the discussion about open employment.
All right, next question here, Luke. What is something that makes you feel confident or supported when learning something new or starting something new? Oh, for me, it will be having a person coming with me to make me feel confident and someone that I can trust and be able to have good banter between me and the other person so that I can feel confident while working in that environment. Um, and you just gotta have that, obviously, that trust and that respectfulness, and so you can feel confident, and then you're supported in the right way for, yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it's about preparation also, but also it's around building trust, having people around you to help you.
Oh, wow, we're getting lots of questions now, Kirsty. Can you help?
Yeah, you are. No, that's great. You're both doing really well there. So, we've answered that question there, which is from Sham, if I've said that right. What is something that makes you feel confident or supported when learning something new or starting something new? So you both had a bit of a different response there. Wendy's asked, what sort of skills do open employers need to have to include people with intellectual disability better? So is there some things we can think about for that one?
Better attitudes towards people with intellectual disability.
Mm. Better attitudes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
communication, because a lot of them sometimes speak to us, like, or for me, for experience, in a baby manner, and that shouldn't be it. It should be speaking in one whole tone to everybody, not just break it down for people with disability. They need to have better attitudes and no discrimination against people with disability. Um, yeah, and then like make sure it's inclusive, as we mentioned.
Yeah. What about you, Luke? Do you want me to
I
repeat the
think,
question? Oh, you got it?
yeah, I think a lot of it is that um, if we set the organization up right, and I'm all for people being employed and I'm all for people having open employment, but we've got to have a discussion with the employer around what the person needs before we go down the path of employment. So I'm thinking of giving it a go sort of model is sort of work experience and sort of seeing what people can do, how we can best support them to do what the company's expected them to do.
Mm. And you mentioned work experience there, and I think about what Brooke mentioned on the polished pathway that often people with intellectual disabilities are not given opportunities for work experience, so they might not have a chance to do those kinds of things as well.
Exactly.
Mm. All right, let's have a look. We do have some questions coming through. Um, all right, so some of these, if there's any that we read out and we think it might be better to answer it offline, we'll do that. But let's see what the question here. So what can employers do, especially small businesses, that can reduce barriers for people with intellectual disability to open employment? And to know how to advertise a job opportunity well for people with intellectual disability. So there's a few questions there.
Good
But
questions.
yeah, Luke, do you want to start us off there or how do you want to approach? Yeah.
I think with this one, I think it's also about um, adapting the interview style for for people with disabilities. So if having a conversation with the person with disability first, before having the actual interview about what they need, but also with employers employing more people, I think it's important and this is one thing I want to get across is we need to make sure that employers are aware that there are government programs out there for them to get access to things so that the employers can see the investment of people with disabilities, but also we can set it up before it goes down that path, if that makes sense.
Mm, it does, and I'm sure if they have any more questions, they can ask on there. Um, all right. Either Brooke or Luke, do either of you, Melinda's got a question here. Why do you think employers are not hiring people with disability?
Because there's lots of discrimination in this world, and
Mhm.
people overlook people with disability and not what they can do in the inside.
Mhm.
Like
Kind of
I've had
some
that happen to
assumptions.
me a few times. I got knocked back from a few jobs, and it hurts to see I'm capable to do something, and I'm showing that I can, fly different states with my job. I show them that I can, look at big words and, all that kind of stuff. And they still knock you back because of your disability. And I said, well, I know somebody who works here with a disability. Like, why are you knocking me back for? Or because it's the way you look. You don't look good, like, for your disability. So
Mm,
that breaks people down. And then people don't want to go back out there to hand resumes out or trying to be out there to look for a job. So that's
mm,
why not many people are getting hired.
yeah, okay. And their employers maybe are making some assumptions about people with with disability, and we're
Yeah.
talking about people with intellectual disability right now. So they assume things about people with intellectual disability. Luke, what about yourself?
For me, this is going to be a very awkward, like not an awkward question. I know how to answer it. Because my background has been primarily open employment. I this one's hard. I think employers are they're willing to give it a some employers are willing to give it a go, and I think some employers are cautious, or this is just my view. I think because all the employers that I've had have been nothing but supportive. And mine has just been in the open market. I've got to declare that. So I
Can I,
think,
can I ask, Luke, sorry to interrupt then,
yeah,
and you've had a really good experience. What are some of those things that have made that a good experience?
good question. I think having bosses or CEOs or managers that believe in you, I think having allies that can actually see the potential, but also um, work with you around how to get access to those things. And encouragement is the best thing.
Mm.
But I feel like when because I also had one good experience where an organization reached out to an organization and said like, oh, we really want someone with Down syndrome. And so obviously like all parents kind of like, oh, there's food involved, But um he wanted somebody with Down syndrome to work in his business. Like he actually reached out and said, "We want somebody." And obviously, I put my hand up and I worked there for 6 months. But it was a good experience because he actually said he wanted somebody. But I've never, ever, ever beforehand never seen somebody put their hand up and say, "We want someone with a disability to work here. We want someone," you know and
Mm,
it kind of breaks your heart now. Like, not many people are doing that, and a lot of people now are trying to what's the word? Like they trying to carve out jobs where people can still work. To work for people, a person who has a disability to work there, but they're carving it out, making it easy, not making a challenge and when I go to work every day with Inclusion Australia, I want a challenge and a new task every day. Not the same thing every time, because there's no point going to work then if you're just doing the same thing every time. It's repetitive and it's not fun sometimes when
Mm.
you're doing things ongoing, the same thing. Yeah.
It's good to get out of your comfort zone sometimes and
Yeah.
try new things, hey. I was just wondering before, it's one of these, we've got lots of questions in here, but there's a question here that I think, Brooke, you and Luke might have an answer to, but it's in
Mm.
terms of, you said some advice that you gave was to treat you as an adult like you are and not to kind of, to have suitable or appropriate communication. So not making it like you said, don't speak like a baby to you kind of thing.
Yeah.
How can someone's asked, how can we adapt our communication for different levels of intellectual disability? So how do you think someone should approach that with someone?
Well, if somebody comes in already and says like, "Oh, I use a communication pad," or you know, speak to them in that term. If they have like an interview beforehand and not saying the normal word, but like, speak properly,
Hmm.
I would want the person to speak to me like I'm speaking to them.
Yeah. And is it helpful, and tell us if it's not, is it helpful to ask that person how they're wanting to, how they're wanting to be communicated with?
Well, yeah, it is, but like I feel like that the other person should actually show them, like how we can now describe me and how we're speaking now.
Mm,
People should just think, oh, okay, that, and that's the way she's best to communicate with. And
mm.
that's the way I would like to be communicated with.
Okay, thank you, Brooke. What about Luke? Do you have any thoughts on this? How we can maybe adapt our communication for different levels of intellectual disabilities? That's the question.
yeah, I think, like say, all right. say easy read. I think um, we need to encourage businesses to look at easy read, accessible information, but also interview styles, but also giving people on the job training and giving people a go. Because one thing I've learned in my career is people have always given me a shot. Um, and also, it's about sort of taking that plunge into the unknown for the employer. I know, look, I understand it's risky. I understand it's completely risky. But in my experience, like people with disabilities stay at their employers a long time. Like I've been with my another employer for 17 years. And that's for volunteer free to paid work. And that's all that time. And I like what I do every day. Um, so it's about investment. You invest in the person, but also it's a long-term look at.
Mm. Okay, well, thank you. Um, all right, we still do have some questions coming back. I thought I'd better see if Sally wants to take back over, so I'm pass back to Sally. Otherwise, we can continue on. I'm happy to be guided by Sally.
No, I think we should absolutely keep going through the questions. There was one earlier that I was really interested in hearing your thoughts on, Brooke and Luke. And it was, what do people do that they think is helpful, but is actually really not helpful?
When people are in the way too much and it's hovering over your shoulder. And like, yes, okay, some people might need support, but not all the time to watch you do something. Like, I've got like a best friend who works in active where she puts this a lolly in a bag each time and just passes it on to the next person. And she's got a support on her shoulder. She told her like to leave her alone because she knows how to put a lolly in a bag, you know. So it is frustrating.
I think for me it's the assumption, like the assumption that um, you know people can't do things or whatever like that. But it's also about learning. It's also about we as a community, as people with disabilities, need to teach people as well. So it's more of a give and take situation, you know?
That's that's interesting. Thank you for both of those. I was just thinking, bef when we were preparing for this presentation, I think it was a conversation I was having with Luke, is some people with intellectual disabilities or disabilities more broadly, they might not know, like if we go back to their work experience, they might not have had opportunities to kind of do things or being given opportunities. Do you see that as quite, like if we think of the polished pathways, there some people like their future is already kind of stepped out for them and they're maybe not aware of all the different opportunities that could be for them.
I don't think people like, since Inclusion Australia has done this polished pathway, I don't think anyone understands the polished pathway that well.
Mm.
And that's why we have to show people like the barriers on stopping, you know. So I think it's important that we speak everywhere so people can understand like how to navigate that system.
Absolutely. What about you, Luke?
I think I agree with you. I think that the opportunities, if you're not told, um, they're out there, but it's hard to get involved. But it's also about having allies. It's also about having the allies for people as well.
Mm.
Um, and talking to, like having a conversation with the person around what they want to do. Um, yeah.
I think that's a really good point there that you just made, Luke. Have the conversation with the person to see what it is that they are wanting to do. Because again, it comes back to a point Brooke made earlier about assumptions, right? It's
Mm.
Mm.
otherwise you're just assuming. If you're not having the conversation, you're assuming. All right. I'm just wondering, there are a few questions in here that probably will take us a little bit longer to answer, or might include some links to different resources. So we might take them offline. But just wanted to check if anyone else has any questions that Brooke or Luke can chat to live here. Otherwise, Brooke or Luke, is anything you've been thinking about that you'd love to say that we haven't said yet?
No.
I guess what I would say is to employers or to service providers on the webinar is look at the abilities of the person and have a conversation, but also um, have the capability to have a conversation and don't be afraid to say, look, I might need some help or more understanding because we're all here to have a conversation with you.
We're always trying to have a go.
Mm.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Brooke and Luke, for sharing your presentation and responding to those questions. That has been incredibly helpful. And Brooke, I really liked what you said about wanting a challenge, not wanting to go to work every day and do the same thing day in, day out. How boring that would be. You don't want it to be easy. You want to be, learning and doing new things every day. And I think that's something that we can all identify with. So thank you for going through those. And like we said, if there's any that we weren't able to respond to today, we will endeavour to get back in touch with you. But also please reach out to Inclusion Australia and the team there, and they can also provide you with answers and links to references and resources as well. So as we mentioned, today's session has been recorded, so that will be made available to you in the very near future. And next week, we're going to be joined by a very good friend of mine, Ben Moxie, who is the Emerging Technology Advisor at Guide Dogs New South Wales ACT, and we're going to be talking more about blindness and vision impairment in the workplace. So I hope that you can join us for that. But until then, once again, thank you, Brooke, thank you, Luke, thank you, Kirsten, and also thanks to Liv in the background, who's made sure that we could deliver today's session smoothly. And thank you to everyone for coming along and joining in. It's been great to have you here, and have a lovely day.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks, guys. Well done.